works. It's like, oh my God, now we have to confront the bear.
You're already like $1 billion business at this point. By 92, you end 92 at $2.8 billion in revenue.
Now IBM,
but you're still a pipsqueak.
We're still pipsqueak to IBM. And remember, we have no enterprise presence. And IBM has all dominant enterprise presence.
So who's using Windows and how are you selling to them at this point?
Interesting. Single copies, some hobbyists and end users, somebody who says, hey, I really want to use a spreadsheet, and a lot of users in enterprises. So it wasn't going through IT. You'd have a user that would buy a PC on the expense account, probably for the department, buy a copy of Windows, buy a copy of Excel, like at an Egghead Software, it was a software retailer at the time, and bring them in and use them. And then IT started to get nervous about that. We knew most of the copies, not most, but many of the copies were winding up in businesses. What the hell? IBM's going to stomp us like a bug.
You just took as a given assumption that if IBM wants to stamp out this happening, it's going to happen. So if we want a future, we got to play with them.
Yeah. That's why we were, quote, riding the bear the whole time, because they'd stomp us out and they'd divorce us in 90. And then we say, oh my God.
Okay. So at this point, your business, even though it's, billion plus scale, it's selling to retailers to sell software, copies of software, DOS, Windows, languages, apps.
Not DOS. DOS was always sold to
OEM.
Yeah, not always, but so much the lion's share, it's worth saying it was only sold because you needed a BIOS. Remember, you needed a BIOS. So you had to have the hardware vendor build the BIOS into the machine, basically.
So you've got that, the OEM business, which was
the OEM business was
strong.
the biggest part of the business.
Yep.
And then we had this retail business, and there was no notion of enterprise licensing.
Yeah, you've got no CIO relationships, no enterprise agreement, no.
We had a couple CIO relationships. The Air Force was the first big Windows customer.
Your first enterprise customer was government?
Our first big Windows customer, at least as I remember it, was the U.S. Air Force, and they were buying single copies of Windows. When you say government, there's really two governments in this country. There's government and there's the military. And the military is a much more disciplined, advanced user of IT. They're just better. They're more professionally run than most parts of government. So yeah, it was the Air Force.
So you've got like a little bit, but
yeah, we had like one or two customers just to prove we could actually serve big customers.
As we understand it, you kind of had this realization at this point once the divorce happens. Well, I'm going to go figure out how to do what IBM does, like you personally.
And to put a finer point on it, the thing that we said on our episode, and I'm curious if it's true or not, is this was not Bill's passion area. And you sort of raised your hand and said, I'll go figure out enterprise sales.
Oh yeah. No, that's for sure true. Bill's passion, look, Bill had passions a lot of places, but you'd say the apps group and what Windows could deliver to the apps quite appropriately. I'd say that's where a lot of Bill's brain cycles went. Mm-hmm. I had also hired Dave Cutler. Dave Cutler had been the architect of the VMS operating system for digital equipment. And, we had DOS and Windows. And when we were talking to Cutler about coming here, he says, I don't want to work any toy operating systems. And I had to say to Dave, good thing, because we have a toy operating system. But Dave is the key to getting us there. We said, look, you got to build an operating system whose API looks like Windows and whose user interface looks like Windows.
So developers can be familiar with it and write apps for it.
Yeah, and you might make some changes because you have to, but it's got to be a robust operating system. It's got to have a secure kernel. It's got to have all of these things.
The product set that you had wasn't really enterprise grade yet.
No, we had a joint development agreement, a joint agreement on Land Manager with a company called 3Com. It wasn't all our stuff. We had a development agreement with a company called Sybase to do the SQL database because we were trying to figure out all these pieces IBM would have, and we didn't have any of that.